We really have to be creative and looking for opportunities to reduce the number of times that we are leaving our home and coming in contact with other people.
New rules now in place across Ontario. Here in Windsor, some continue to protest breaking those newly imposed restrictions. Windsor-Essex remains a hotspot for COVID-19 cases, and the spread in Chatham-Kent and Sarnia is increasing as well. We check in to see how they're handling the second wave. A live look outside now at the bright city of Detroit. Cloudy overnight, a chance that we see a mix of rain and snow tomorrow. Colette Kennedy joins us with the full forecast later tonight. I'm Chris Ensing. Thanks for joining us. New regulations and new questions about how exactly enforcement's going to work locally. This as anti-lockdown protests continue to pop up, even with those new rules in place. CBC's Katerina Georgieva joins us now live. Kat, what is this going to look like on the ground here in Windsor?
Well, Chris, it's still a little bit murky, but we do know that enforcement will be in the hands of bylaw officers and police officers. So what they can do is they can disperse gatherings or events that are happening when they shouldn't be. They can also shut down a premise that is hosting an event or gathering when it shouldn't be. And they can also issue tickets and fines. And those start at a minimum of $750. So it's a hefty fine, but it hasn't stopped people from breaking the rules. Just this afternoon, there was an anti-mask rally in the downtown core. It was a small gathering, but it was definitely big enough that it was in violation of the rules. And police say that they did respond to that event, but nobody was arrested, but they are investigating. And there was also another demonstration that happened in the early hours of this morning, and police say that 4 people were identified in that case, and they will be appearing in court. Now, Mayor Drew Dilkens, he was asked about some of these rallies because we've seen a number of them in the last several months. And he says the police are not ignoring them. He says police are actively working behind the scenes to gather evidence, to identify some of the people involved. And he said that when they do respond, it's a balancing act between enforcement and the safety of the officers.
I receive emails, and I see many of them. I've received a couple of today where people are saying that we're simply doing nothing. And I want the public to know that it's absolutely not the case. But if you expect police to go in with shields and a battering ram to move these people along, you're going to be sadly disappointed. You won't see that happen. But I can assure you that the chief and the team are issuing summonses, which are tickets. These people will have to attend court and answer to a justice of the peace. And the fines are quite severe.
And I did ask for an interview with police today, but my request was denied. I also was asking some questions to get some more information about what enforcement is going to look like moving forward, but I did not hear back, Chris.
Now, Katerina, as we try to better understand how enforcement's going to work, there's some concerns about how this might impact racialized areas. What are you hearing tonight?
Well, yeah, there's a fear that members of diverse communities, they might be targeted. And some of them say that they're already over-policed. And one advocate points out that people in diverse communities, they're disproportionately affected by the virus. And she says that when you combine the challenges of COVID, of the pandemic, with law enforcement, which is already a sensitive subject for many people in those communities, it could be a recipe for disaster.
I personally think it's a little dangerous and reckless to give police officers the power of determining whether or not someone's reasoning to leave their house is legitimate.
So essentially we have, people who we've for the past summer have said need to be abolished. These very people have now been given very broad, ambiguous power. Do I ever think that police can do what is a public health role? No. I do not think they have that mandate. That never should be their mandate. We know what their mandate is. We know where it came from with respect to Black and Indigenous people. And I'm not in the project of trying to rebrand policing with rainbows and smiles. It just won't work for me.
I also want to mention that the mayor was asked about the possibility of nighttime road checks and whether that could possibly be used to enforce the new rules. And the mayor said that he's not aware of anything being planned like that. And he added that it would be really difficult for a police officer to determine whether or not you were telling the truth if you said that you were going to the grocery store or the pharmacy, for example. But he says that ultimately, at the end of the day, this is about ringing the alarm bells that the situation is dire and that if people don't act accordingly, the situation could get even worse. Chris.
Thanks, Katerina. CBC's Katerina Georgieva working from home tonight. 216 new cases of COVID-19 reported by the Windsor-Essex Health Unit this morning. 4 more people have died of COVID-19. The region continues to be a hotspot in the province, and the city of Windsor has changed how they're going to offer some services, while adding that the staffing situation has been relatively stable.
With that in mind, we have gone back to all of our areas. We continue to meet 3 times a week with our community control group, and each area has provided a detailed plan articulating the most critical functions that the city needs to keep up and running, and we've identified the most critical staff.
Now here's a look at some of what's changing. The 400 building is open, but the new City Hall, that's appointment only now. No changes to your garbage or recycling schedule. The public depot is still operating, but at a limited capacity. Parks, they're open, including playgrounds, but no outdoor rinks. Now the mayor parked the buses during the first lockdown. They're continuing to run, but you have to board from the back, and they're operating on an enhanced Saturday schedule. Now, as Windsor-Essex continues to see high COVID-19 case counts, neighboring regions have largely been able to avoid that in the second wave, but that's taken a turn. Community leaders are worried. CBC's Carrie Breen is keeping an eye on things outside of Windsor. Carrie, how are Chatham-Kent and Lantham County doing right now?
Chris, both regions have really seen new cases soar in the last month, and it comes after a stretch of relatively low case counts. Here's a look at the numbers in Chatham-Kent. Take a look at how many more people have tested positive, now sitting at 953 cases as of this morning. And when we look at Sarnia, the rise has been even more dramatic. They were in the green zone back on December 14th, but cases have tripled in the last month. Now, I spoke with Mayor Mike Bradley in Sarnia, and he says that he's disappointed and that people have left their guard down.
A number of these contacts people had that brought about COVID weren't necessary. We had meat raffles that took place. We had an office party, engagement that should not be happening. The majority of the population, though, has been pretty good, understanding that where the crisis is at, we get, I'd say, 2/3 cooperation, and that's probably pretty standard everywhere. And then there's the people that just don't believe that this is going to happen to them.
Now, those kinds of social engagements that the mayor was talking about aren't permitted under the current stay-at-home order that took effect at midnight. But officials with the hospital system remain concerned about what's to come, since it could take several weeks to see the full effect of the rising cases on hospitalizations in Sarnia.
Now, Windsor-Essex, we border on Chatham-Kent. Windsor-Essex a hot spot, so what are they seeing there?
Well, the surge hasn't been as strong, and overall case counts are much lower than what's been seen elsewhere here in southwestern Ontario. The hospital system's ICUs are nearly at capacity. A group of health officials say the healthcare system faces extremely serious strain. Chatham-Kent's medical officer of health says he thinks the region is facing a perfect storm, adding that things may get worse before they get better.
We've had issues of not only a provincial trend that we have to buck, but we have a major situation right next door to us in Windsor-Essex, and we have the influence of the holidays.
Now, one thing that they don't have right now, Chris, is the COVID vaccine. Officials in both regions are anticipating that the shot could become available within weeks, but they don't have any official date yet.
CBC's Carrie Breen with a regional update. Back in Windsor-Essex, the 2 largest school boards will not hold exams. Instead, teachers will do an assessment with students to see how they've understood the material.
Yeah, so we're adapting to a world where we have students being able to submit assignments, resubmit, have conversations with teachers, so teachers can probe and find out exactly what students know and what they can do.
And what that allows the teachers to do is create something that's applicable to their course environment, but also gauging the outcomes that needs to be achieved for the student in order to get their credit. So students are engaged in the classroom, and then they're engaged in the actual culminating the activity in order to show the knowledge and understanding of the actual course.
People who fly into Canada will need to have a negative COVID-19 test, and that includes migrant workers. Thousands come to Windsor-Essex every year. An advocacy group says the new rule isn't fair to workers, raising concerns about cost and the risks involved to get tested. CBC's Tamina Aziz reports.
In a letter to the federal government, Justice for Migrant Workers raises concerns about the country's new COVID-19 testing policy. The group says some workers may have to pay up to $350 for a test and travel long distances to get tested. Using public transportation, they're further exposed to the virus.
So workers, whatever savings they have, they may have to borrow from family or friends. The burden's on them, which is not acceptable, right? These workers who are putting food on our table should not be put under this unnecessary burden to continue to work, especially if we have not taken any steps to protect their well-being while they're in Canada.
He says migrant workers live in poor conditions here. Ramzaroop says they're often overcrowded in their communal housing. Migrant workers have been among the hardest hit groups during the pandemic. Nearly 2,000 workers contracted the virus across the country so far. 3 died from it. Federal Health Minister Patty Hajdu called it a national disgrace. The general manager of the Ontario Greenhouse Vegetable Growers says the government decision may have been rushed.
I understand the government's wish to have this done, but a lot of things can happen on the way to the airport, at the airport, and so on and so forth, right? So it is one additional measure.
He says greenhouse workers have good accommodations and they make sure their health and well-being is maintained. The federal government sent an email statement to CBC News. In part, it reads, "At this time, temporary foreign workers are subject to the same requirements as all travelers to Canada. This means that, unless they are exempted, they will be required to meet the new requirement regarding testing. We will continue to work with workers, employers, partner countries, and stakeholders to ensure the temporary foreign worker program's success alongside this new requirement." Ramzaroop says living and working conditions for migrant workers hasn't changed. He says it's important for the community to put pressure on the government and amplify the voices of workers. Tamina Aziz, CBC News, Windsor.
In an effort to speed up COVID-19 vaccinations, several provinces have hinted pharmacists will be allowed to administer the shots. It's estimated they could dispense millions of doses a week. It's already being done in the UK and in the United States, but so far there's little indication of how or when a program could be up and running here in Canada. CBC's John Paul Tasker reports.
Pharmacists say they are ready to put shots in the arms of Canadians, but 2 months before the country is expected to start vaccinating the general population, pharmacists say they haven't heard how they'll be a part of this mass immunization campaign.
Pharmacists need to know, roughly when they might expect the vaccines, the kinds of quantities that they might expect to get, who they'll be targeting, and that's so that they can set up their own systems, bring in the capacity that they need to ramp up or scale up existing campaigns.
The president of Shoppers Drug Mart, the country's largest chain, says a lot of pharmacies have experience with vaccinations already in this country. Of course, they're coming off the flu vaccine campaign from last fall, when millions of Canadians got shots at their local pharmacies.
Canadians know and trust their pharmacy to go get vaccinations. We've been doing flu for many, many years now, along with other vaccines. And I think the governments are recognizing that.
If all of the country's 11,000 pharmacies are mobilized, then Leger at Shoppers Drug Mart says they can do up to 3 million Canadians a week. That's far more than the 500,000 we've been able to do in the last month. The issue, of course, is supply. Canada is expected to have limited access to vaccines for the foreseeable future. John Paul Tasker, CBC News, Ottawa.
The former governor of Michigan faces charges for his alleged role in the Flint water crisis. Cameras captured former Governor Rick Snyder as he walked out of the county jail today. Snyder is facing 2 charges of willful neglect of duty. The former governor was arraigned earlier today where he pleaded not guilty. Former Flint emergency manager and the former medical executive are also facing charges for lying to a police officer, involuntary manslaughter, and neglect of duty. Fears of new violence are building in the aftermath of last week's deadly rioting in Washington. Officials are preparing to respond to any trouble with as many as 20,000 troops expected in the U.S. Capitol in the coming days to boost security. Katie Nicholson has the details.
Long a symbol of freedom and democracy, the National Mall, the People's Park, today fenced in. Not far away, 7,000 guardsmen now warily watch over the Capitol.
There are now 3 plots that we've been briefed on to attack the Capitol in Washington, D.C., and attack lawmakers and assassinate them potentially.
With inauguration less than a week away, tensions and security both high.
Unfortunately, we have to plan for the worst, and we will. We hope it doesn't happen.
Across the country, other state capitals also planning for the worst. Buildings boarded up in Des Moines, Iowa. In Oklahoma, the National Guard is sending nearly 400 citizen soldiers to D.C., but it has to balance that with the possible need at home.
We feel very confident we'll have an adequate force here in Oklahoma to help if anything outbreaks around Oklahoma.
The ayes are 232.
Last night's vote to impeach President Trump a second time put the 10 Republicans who voted in favor in a dangerous spot.
I have colleagues who are now traveling with armed escorts out of the fear for their safety. Many of us are altering our routines, working to get body armor.
All as some evidence suggests the attack on Congress was better planned than originally thought.
In a spontaneous rally, you don't bring pipe bombs and flex cuffs, weapons, Molotov cocktails. That's not spontaneous, that's pre-planned.
In a letter to the sergeants at arms of both chambers, more than 30 House representatives now also pushing for an immediate investigation into the suspicious behavior and access given to visitors in the Capitol complex the day before the rampage. Even as 20,000 National Guardsmen are expected to arrive in D.C. in the next few days, it's unclear if even that will make lawmakers feel safe ahead of what's supposed to be a peaceful transfer of power. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Toronto.
Back here in Windsor, young dancers had the opportunity to audition for the longest-running ballet company in North America. Thanks to COVID-19, they did so virtually.
And front, and back. Keep that leg stretched all the way around. Stretch.
Now, every year, the Royal Winnipeg Ballet goes looking for talent. It's regarded as the premier ballet company in Canada. That's why their auditions are a magnet for promising young dancers hoping to win a place in their dance school. The company says it's grateful to be able to continue running auditions, but the pandemic can create extra challenges.
Normally we're hopping on planes and we're traveling across the country and we get to meet everybody in person. This year we're still in Winnipeg. It's been a blessing to be able to still continue and do the auditions. A few of them get the opportunity to rent their local studio and do that, but a lot of them are in their living room, some of them in their bedroom, and it's amazing to see them still work and be able to audition in these times.
A live look outside here at the city of Windsor as we look ahead in the forecast. A chance that we could see a little rain, maybe a little snow. Colette knows. We'll ask her about it next. And joining us now for a live look at the weather is Colette Kennedy. Colette, we'll get to the forecast in just a second, but first, we just showed the auditions for the Royal Winnipeg Ballet. I missed my spot. Did you sign up in time, or?
No, and I mean, I actually took classes when I was a kid, and you know, you and I were talking a little bit in the break, and my mind, I can't remember what any of the positions are called. But you know, I have the muscle memory, because what I realized, and I didn't tell you this, is that if I think about it, and I know no one can see my feet, so it doesn't matter, but I know position 1, I know 2, I know 3, like I can remember them. I just don't know what they're called. This goes, the rest of it remembers these things.
I love it, the trust
anyway,
there.
Suffice to say, no, I did not make my, I don't even think my recitals were much to write home about. It's a good thing you can't see my feet too, because I'm not necessarily wearing shoes. Might have slippers on, people. Never know. All right, let's talk about what's happening here, because there's a reason I've got this so broad with our satellite and radar imagery. And this is the next system that's coming our way. Actually, a system coming our way. Something changing in the weather pattern. And I know to have some sunshine and mild temperatures, that's not necessarily something you want, but we have had a lot of gray skies too. We really need something more active to kick that cloud cover out of the way. Well, I'll kind of tell you what's going to be happening here. Our current temperature now 2 degrees for Chatham-Kent as well, and just know that temperature almost steady through the overnight. If anything, our overnight temperature will be milder than what we're going to see through the afternoon tomorrow, because that temperature will actually be falling off. So I've stopped this 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. We get into a little bit of a light mix because of that temperature, again, just above freezing, mostly some rain showers and kind of mixing with some wet flurries. Just back to the west of us, a chance for some more significant accumulation into Michigan, but we are looking at lighter stuff here, or that's just kind of washing and melting away. Even into Saturday afternoon, we're going to see some rotation around this and flurries. In fact, I've got flurries in the forecast into Sunday as well, and quite a bit of cloud cover. Things will be cooling down more significantly too, but not really for another week, but they are going to be coming down for the beginning of next week. So snowfall potential, I've got it at a couple centimeters, but like I said, just west. If we get that cold air coming in a little bit sooner, we could see more significant stuff, but that's all I'm anticipating. Overnight tonight, 2 to 3 degrees, nearly steady from where we are now, and then starting to fall tomorrow afternoon. And just know the roadways, I know we're not supposed to be out, but for those who need to be, will be a little bit wet and a little slick in areas throughout the day tomorrow. Breezy conditions as well. That cool down I mentioned, it's pretty slight, but that's what's coming our way, Chris.
Okay, and just for the record, my shoes are on. They're not tied up. We are in a pandemic. Just asking for a little slack.
Are they real shoes? Are they running shoes?
Are they real? That's it, Colette. That's all our time.
It's
Thank you very much. Thank you. On to the next. On to the next. Have a good day. Now, coming up, we are going to talk about another inspiring story. A young kid who's trying to find his way to the International Space Station. An aspiring young astronaut got the chance to speak with someone who's living that experience on the International Space Station. Greg Ross has more on the 8-year-old's conversation and how it came about.
Hi, Victor.
That was 8-year-old Yafet Yosef of Toronto talking to astronaut Victor Glover, who is currently on a mission aboard the International Space Station, which, according to Yafet, is pretty far away.
400 to 420 kilometers.
Wow, that's a long way away. This Zoom call was organized by Glover's alma mater, California Polytechnic State University, and an organization called the National Society of Black Engineers. They wanted Yafet to be a part of it when they found out about his keen interest in space travel.
It just started like when he was in SK. They learn about the name of planets and stuff, and he never stopped learning.
How does it feel to be on the first operational flight of the first spacecraft to use a reusable liquid fuel abort system? And what advice would you give to children like me?
Yafet, thank you for that question. Thank you for your voice. It is so inspiring to hear young people's voices up here.
My dream is to go to outer space and be the first African Canadian.
And he doesn't plan to go alone.
He always tell me, "You're gonna come with me to space."
And what do you say to that?
Of course, I'll say yes.
In fact, Yafet has already started planning their itinerary.
For my first space flight, I'm hoping to at least go to the ISS. For my second, I'm hoping to go to the moon. And for my third, I'm hoping to go to Mars.
And after meeting one of his role models, he has more confidence than ever that he will be able to accomplish all of those goals. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Just rocking that blue shirt too. Yafet really already looking the part. Now he just has to go out and get his dream. That's it for us now here at CBC Windsor News. We're on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. The Rick Mercer Report is up next. Thanks for watching.